Okay.
Good morning. Hi, you're here with Beyond the Border. Happy New Year. It's our first show of the year. This is a radio show that focuses on all things immigration. We have different co-hosts every year, all experienced experts in immigration law and various aspects. My name is Elizabeth Garvish. I practice business immigration law and family immigration law here in Atlanta. My law firm is Garvish Immigration Law Group, and I'm joined by three other experts in the area. And I'll let them introduce themselves.
Okay. I am Audra Doyle, and I also practice business and family immigration law at Gene Padberg and Associates in Atlanta, Georgia.
I'm Will Miller. I do 100% removal defense at the Latin American Association, a nonprofit here in Atlanta.
And I'm Keila Marti. I'm the owner and managing attorney of Marti Law Firm. I specialize in family-based immigration, do removal defense as well, and dabbling in investor visas these days.
Ooh, dabbling. That sounds interesting. Yes.
Okay, that's great. Just call me if you need help.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, investor visas that Keila was mentioning, it could be a non-immigrant visa for someone who just wants to come here temporarily, start up a business, and there's no set dollar amount. So that would be the E-investor visa.
Yeah.
But then there's also an investor visa where you can get a green card if
Right.
you have enough cash. So Keila, how much money do you have to buy a green card these days?
Well, $1 million.
$1 million.
But if you are investing in an economically depressed area or a specific area in the United States that's been identified as economically suffering, it could go down to $500,000. So.
Yes. And I 100% recommend that you have a knowledgeable immigration lawyer like Keila or Elizabeth to help you with that type of case, because $1 million is a lot of money and it will be at risk. So you need to make sure your case is as airtight as possible when you're going to do that.
I don't do, so the EB-5 is the green card option for investors, but I don't do much of those. I always, when they say they want EB-5, I bring them in and I say, let's see what other options you have that
Right.
may not have the lengthy processing times and the risk involved with putting all that money down.
Yeah.
But and then there's retrogression of visa numbers and all kinds of stuff going on. But anyway, we'll go back to the beginning. I think a lot of things have happened. I mean, it's always like that.
You can say that again.
But what's going on right now?
Oh, gosh.
Government shutdown.
The longest one in history.
We've a lot of like interesting things to talk about in the business immigration area. There's a new regulation for H-1B registration. We'll talk about. There is, and the effects of the government shutdown. So we'll let you know. I think it'd be important to go through and say, hey, here's what's affected. Here's what's affected. I don't know. I know what's affected on my end, and then you guys can talk about what's affected on the removal side. What else is going on?
The wall. I mean,
well, yeah, that's all the government
shutdown
versus the wall.
So maybe we should start with the biggest issue in the country.
Yeah, we've got the caravan.
Another caravan.
I know lots of people have been
Yeah.
going down there, and so it's a crazy time in immigration. And I feel like I hear myself saying that every day, but I think it's more of a time. I feel like now more than ever, I think I'm very proud to be an immigration lawyer. I was like watching yesterday on Netflix, there was a documentary on how it was basically a documentary on the citizenship test.
Oh.
So it had all these stories of different immigrants, how they got here. And then they went through the New York Historical Society and like the different artwork and like, what is this, this question relates to what? Freedom of religion. This question relates to, when the Declaration of Independence was signed in Philadelphia, it took 5 days to get to New York. And then at that point, there's a painting of everyone trying to get the King George statue down. And they tore that statue down, but it took 5 days to get there. So, what are these questions related to? And then it kind of went back and documented. So I was sitting here watching this and like tears are in my eyes because it's such a great area of law to be in. It's so like, this is our country. And then the next thing is like our lawyers that we deal with. I think of any other group of attorneys that are just more helpful, collegial, just supportive of each other. So it's like we're in this battle. I feel like every day we hear illegal all over the news, which is a term that it just hurts my heart to describe a human being. But I feel like now we've got the strong group. We've got people that are fighting, and we're fighting this fight. Even for our clients, where you just be like, oh, she has a master's degree from China, and he's a teacher at a private school here from Canada. Oh, why are we fighting for these people? I mean, why is it so hard for these people? Well, it's hard for every immigrant in this time because an environment has been created that kind of pervades this anti-immigrant sentiment.
Call it the culture of no.
Yeah.
From our
and
government.
the fact that you can say, the fact that we've got this illegal term flying around, and it's just fine on every news show, and it's hurtful. But getting back to business, we're gonna just continue our fight, continue like spreading what's really going on in the world, and sharing that with you guys through our show. And if anyone has questions, I'm sure you can reach out to any immigration lawyer and find out really what's going on. I actually, before I turn it over, but it was funny because I have one of my girlfriends who's married to, like a conservative Southern guy, and he's like wanted to talk to me about immigration, but it ended up like, I was like, he didn't understand the whole thing, and it ended up like him hanging up on me.
Oh my.
And we're good friends. And then a few weeks later, I think he did, because, I was like, I put some points. I said, well, here, this is a point. It's not on the news. And so he did a little research, and then he kind of called me back up, and he said, well, I apologize, Elizabeth, because I really didn't understand like exactly what's going on. So I think for people, like what's out there in the news, it's not always exactly what's happening. There's more to the story, and there's always a human being behind it. So I think when you're listening about immigration, you're deciding your views on that topic, and have a softer heart and like more of an open mind about really what's going on. It's not all in the news. It's little sound bites that make the news, but that's it.
And I think part of that is that people want a very simplistic answer, and they want things to be black and white. And with the law, and I think especially with immigration law, nothing is black and white for us. The law is so complicated. Immigration law is one of the most complicated areas of law in the United States. I think right up there with taxes. So the issues that we deal with are so subtle, and they're so intricate that it is impossible for people to be able to have a quick, pat answer and to get, people say, well, we need immigration reform. Well, what does that mean? It can be sweeping immigration reform, or it can be some very technical fixes to help our clients in their everyday lives. So, we're dealing with a very complicated subject
I always
here.
feel like the president, whoever it is, just get a couple really smart immigration lawyers that are like in this.
So we can say, here's what the deal really is.
Yeah. Hey, all you have to do is tweak. All you have to do is tweak this little part. Take away the 3 and 10 year bars, and take away the per country limits for immigration. You're going to change everything.
Yes.
But they don't. That's the point, is that they don't care about that specifically. They're pushing their agenda, and then whoever is around them that is able to influence their agenda, that's who they're going to listen to, frankly.
And they want, the political points. And so these little intricate technical things that we really could use, that's not very exciting. It's not going to be splashy in the news. So I think people ignore it because they're not going to score political points for that.
When we get to, if you want to talk about right now, I mean, there was a tweet that Donald Trump sent out about.
I don't read his tweets.
Okay. It was like actually one of the immigration lawyers, I forgot his name, did a blog about the tweet because it was about, it said, I can pull it up, but it said something like, don't worry, H-1B visa holders.
Oh.
We're working on this, and there's going to be a pathway to citizenship for you.
There already is a pathway to citizenship.
There's not really through the H-1B. I mean, you have to be sponsored for a green card.
Right.
But I think his information, like there's a new rule about the H-1B lottery and the registration, and it's going to flip over, kind of skew everything towards U.S. master's degree holders, and you have to pre-register instead of just file. And so that's now kind of in the comment period. They put it on the fast track, so there's 30 days to comment. So I think they received thousands of comments, but they reviewed them all in 9 days. And then it's moved on to the next step, which is crazy under the government shutdown. So I think they're pushing to get it in at this cap season, which has started now. It's April 1. You have to file.
We're already preparing.
It's going to be it's going to be crazy. But he sent this tweet out, and it really made no sense. So you're like, okay, he just went to somebody and said, "What's going on with H-1B?" Okay, well, it made no sense to anyone who knows that. And it's like, oh, he's trying to reassure H-1B holders. If you're an H-1B visa holder, you don't need to go through the cap again. So I don't know what new thing he's talking about, and I don't know what path to citizenship he's talking about. So, because with the H-1B visa, you spend 6 years, you're gone. You have to have a completely separate application to be sponsored for permanent residence. There is no path to citizenship. So a lot of that so that's just another kind of crazy thing. Like, even from the very top of our government, we're getting bad information. So I think everyone needs to understand and open up your mind. And it's the facts. It's not like we're making things up.
When I say there's a path from an H-1B, that means that you have the opportunity for your employer to sponsor you for the next step. So you're able to take the next step after you start your H-1B to go towards citizenship, towards a green card, towards citizenship.
Yeah.
So to me, that's a path. It's a complicated, long, and difficult process, but it can be done.
Yeah, and I mean, I always try to explain to my clients that with the non-immigrant visa versus the immigrant visa, which is temporary and permanent, you've got to maintain non-immigrant status while you're working on the immigrant visa to a certain point. So they really are different, and I agree with you. It's the path to citizenship, but I think Donald Trump doesn't have an understanding for any of that.
I don't know.
So he doesn't have an understanding for any of that. But it's kind of like, anyone who knows anything about immigration and employers as well, they're like, what is that?
No.
So
also, we would love to hear from our listeners this morning. So please call in and ask us your questions. Everybody's talking about this subject. I hear it all the time from our friends, our clients. So you can go and call us at 1-678-619-1402. Or you can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and there are ways on those places to ask us questions. So we have our wonderful producers this morning to help get your questions to us. We'd love to hear from you. So do you want to start big or start small? The details or the big picture?
Do you guys want to talk about the government shutdown and
Sure.
what's affecting the government shutdown right now?
Yeah. There was a great list. I need to post it to my Facebook page of the various agencies that we deal with and which part of the agencies have been affected by the shutdown. So Elizabeth and I think now Keila more and more, we mostly deal with USCIS. And that I call that the benefits section of the Department of Homeland Security. The USCIS is funded by the fees that people pay them. So the USCIS is up and running.
Which are no joke, by the way.
It is, the fees are outrageous, but that's a different subject. They're up and running. They're not reliant on congressional funding to keep going. However, within the USCIS, E-Verify, is that run by ICE or USCIS?
E-Verify is run by USCIS, and
it is shut down right now.
It receives appropriated funds, which it's a pretty big deal that E-Verify is shut down for a lot of students that are doing STEM OPT extensions, which is if you have a degree in a science, technology, engineering, mathematics field, then you may extend your training period after your degree up to 24. It's how long is it? 24 months.
Yeah.
But you must have your employer enrolled in E-Verify.
Right.
So now I think people are kind of gearing up if their program's ending to get their OPT, optional practical training extensions filed for a work permit. And so that's really scary for a lot of students. And
I heard from a university administrator recently that some companies are mailing in their E-Verify applications.
Okay.
But that makes me a little nervous because what if the mail-in isn't accepted and that sort of thing? So, they're doing their best to try and find a workaround to the online system being down, but I'm not so sure that a mail-in is going to be effective for those students. So if I were the lawyer, I would be concerned that a mail-in would be done, the student would rely on it, they'd possibly not get approved for their STEM extension because it wasn't done properly. So I think that's a big effect on our students right now.
Okay, so USCIS is still open except for E-Verify.
Yeah.
I know, well, CBP is operating obviously because people have to get in and out of the country. But one thing, the CBP website, specifically the I-94
Yes.
page, has not been updated.
Wow.
And I ran across this issue because I had a client come in after the shutdown started, and his I-94 hadn't been uploaded, no access. So I hounded deferred inspections here in Atlanta. Fortunately,
Good for you, Keela.
that's what we do. We hound,
hound them.
We hound them. That's what you have to do. And so I finally got through to an officer, and he's like, "I'm the only one here
Wow.
in the deferred inspection
Yeah,
part."
because CBP is considered essential, and they're required to work without pay.
Yep.
So I think a lot of people are calling in sick, as with the TSA. People are calling in sick or just not as motivated, maybe.
And honestly, I really don't blame them one little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So-
but not being able to access. So the I-94 is the entry document that immigrants get if they're coming in on a non-immigrant status or paroled in or whatever it may be. You have a travel history and you have your last entry kind of all online. And you go to this website and you download that, and that's what you use to extend your non-immigrant status, to
You have to show-
change. You've got to show that you maintain valid status. So it's
Yeah.
a big deal.
It's essential, like, especially if you're filing for asylum too.
Right.
If you need to file within 1 year of entry, and if you don't have evidence to show that you did that, how are you going to get your work permit? And if you don't file within the 1 year and you don't fall within any of the exceptions, you're not able to get an employment authorization document. And for asylum seekers, that's a big deal because that means however long it takes USCIS to get to their applications could be years, and they're here without a work permit, being subject to ICE detaining them. Here in Georgia, they can't get a driver's license, so it's a big deal.
It
for
is.
sure.
Yeah. So moving on,
Department of State?
Yeah. So Department of State, I feel like they're partially funded by their
Self-funded through
fees.
fees, but
Yeah,
I
but
think
the
that
website is down.
Okay. Is it? I
The
was just looking
CAC
yesterday.
website.
Oh, it was working?
We're
Good.
close to processing a lot of people right now.
Good. Some embassy websites say, due to lack of funding, this website
heard-
cannot be updated.
I heard there was-
So when I'm going
yeah.
online to embassy websites, it's not updated, like Keela was
Okay.
saying. But I am still able to file DS26, online forms. That seems to be working.
I've gotten responses like from Toronto emails.
And
pretty-
I know the officers are still working.
Yeah. But how long? What I was reading is that, if this shutdown lasts, there's going to be a depletion of funds. It's going to be harder for them to pay their people. Of course, those are essential functions, but this is really putting a big damper on everything. And then
And
for you
then
guys,
the biggest
EOIR,
issue-
Executive Office
Yes,
of
the
Immigration
courts.
Review.
So
How
Will,
is that
tell us
What's
about
going
that.
on with
Yeah,
that?
EOIR is the Executive Office for Immigration Review. It's the agency within the Department of Justice. The EOIR has the Board of Immigration Appeals and the immigration courts. So right now, all non-detained cases are being canceled and rescheduled. Non-detained is foreign nationals in removal proceedings who are not detained. Those cases are being canceled. It's been a little unclear. Like there's a hotline you can call to see when it's an automated hotline to see the date, time of your hearing, who the judge is. It's still saying that the hearings are going forward, but EOR has a operating policy on its website saying that all non-detained cases are being canceled. And they are, in fact, being canceled, but it's confusing for a lot of folks because the hotline says they're still going forward.
So do you dare not go to court when the hotline says?
I didn't go to court.
Okay.
Because I'm not going to make my clients drive from Alabama
Gotcha.
just to be told to turn back around.
Mm-hmm.
So detained cases are going forward. The complication that we're seeing is that there's two different immigration courts in Atlanta. There's one known as the Annex Court, which opened, I think, in the past 3 years or so.
Yeah.
It's got all non-detained dockets, so none of those cases are going forward. The issue is that the entire building is closed, so immigration attorneys can't get in to do their
Oh, my
submit their
goodness.
filings. So, for instance, to Keela's point about the 1-year filing deadline for asylum applicants, if the 1-year deadline is going to fall during the shutdown, then how are the respondents supposed to submit their 589 to comply with the 1-year filing deadline if the court's not accepting filings? So I assume the immigration judges are going to allow an exception to that based on exceptional circumstances. but it's just kind of a mess. DHS, Office of Chief Counsel, they're not accepting service copies down at the other court. I mentioned there's two courts in Atlanta. There's the Annex Court, which is all non-detained. That court's located in Midtown. The quote-unquote main court is in downtown Atlanta at 180 Ted Turner Drive, and it's a mixed docket. It's got non-detained and detained. So the public can still enter into that building, and the clerk's office, the clerk's window is still operational. I don't think the court administrator is even there right now. I know that the assistant chief immigration judge was accepting filings.
Well, what I heard yesterday, had a colleague that got called in on a non-detained matter to go into court.
Wow.
Specifically, she was called in to do that, and she said that, or another colleague went in the morning to file, and the court administrator was the one taking filings that morning, and I guess there was no other staff member there.
Yeah.
So it's, kind of
It's like maybe a skeleton
Wild
crew
West.
situation.
Yeah.
So apparently at 180 Ted Turner, which is again the mixed non-detained detained, you can submit your filings, and whoever happens to be at the window will accept them and stamp them, but they're not going to be entered into the system, whatever that means. I don't understand the distinction.
Okay.
But I've been afraid to submit anything because I'm afraid it's going to get lost.
Yeah.
You can't even drop off a service copy with Office of Chief Counsel. Anytime you make a filing in the immigration court, you have to provide a service copy to the government, which is Office of Chief Counsel. But they're not accepting service copies right now for whatever reason.
Not even through mail, like if you mailed it and you had your certified delivery notice.
Well, that's true. I guess you could do that. But it's my understanding that the window is not open right now
Okay.
upstairs.
Because I figure if you had some proof that you sent it, they get away with saying, I put it in the tray. That's good enough for you guys.
But no, there's a double standard from what I understand.
Yeah.
If I really had to file something at Ted Turner, then I would take it down there, get a stamp filed copy, and then just say I walked it upstairs. I'd make an affidavit saying that the window was closed.
Yeah.
Right. So what about the TAs, the attorneys, the quote unquote prosecutors for the government in immigration settings? Who's getting paid and who's not? Do you know about that?
The short answer is I don't know. Detained cases are going forward, so there's got to be a TA means trial attorney. It's the Department of Homeland Security, Office of Chief Counsel. The folks that go to court and prosecute for the government in these removal offense cases are called trial attorneys or TAs. So detained cases are going forward, so there's got to be TAs there. So I suppose, I don't know if they're getting paid or not.
Wow.
So what another colleague had told me, they spoke to one of the TAs and she told me that they were just not happy. And I totally understand.
Yes.
And in no way am I insinuating that, just because they're not getting paid, they're not going to do a good job. But, we're all human beings, and I'm sitting in a job where I'm not getting paid. I wonder if that's affecting their choice or decision to join a motion for a bond, let's say. Mm-hmm. If your client, again, not insinuating that they're unprofessional in any way, but, we all know that moods affect people. Judges, when they're in the mood, they're in the mood. And same with us, right? So I'm just wondering, if the freedom of somebody is in the hands of someone who's begrudgingly at work and not getting paid, it's a big concern.
That's not a good starting place.
It's not a good starting
I don't really
Yeah.
feel sorry for those TAs. They get paid a lot of money. I just heard recently how much they get paid, and it's pretty outrageous. In my opinion, being a trial attorney for DHS is pretty analogous to being a criminal defense attorney in the sense that you're just playing defense and trying to poke holes in the case of the respondent. I feel like it's always our burden,
Right,
even if
it
it's
is.
technically not our
Yeah.
burden.
Uh-huh.
We're always the one who have to meet the burden in court of showing that that our client shouldn't be deported. And the TA makes the same arguments over and over.
Well, and you can lose a case even if they don't show up to work. How messed up is that?
Yeah.
I've heard of cases where, you go in to fight an asylum, there's no TA, and you still lose.
Yeah.
Don't know how that happens, but
Well, I could see how it happens. It's the respondent's duty to meet their burden of showing they're a refugee under the meaning of the Immigration and Nationality Act. So the TA doesn't really have to be there. The judge could just say you didn't meet your burden.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I know what you're saying, Keila. I feel bad for anybody that has to work without pay. And there are some good TAs that are fair and have good hearts, I think. And, getting into whether or not they're an essential part of the government is a whole other argument. I mean, because what we were talking about the wall at the very beginning, I mean, you know, either you think there should be open borders or you think there should be such a thing as DHS and TAs and ERO, and maybe it could be implemented and structured a little more fairly. But as long as we do have laws that establish borders, then I think they do serve an essential function. I think it could be carried out better and more fairly and more compassionately.
Yeah.
Right. Compassion. You hit it. Like that's really important.
That's what's missing, I think, right now in our immigration courts.
I've said this many times, but I'm like, really, when I read these decisions, I'm like, really, did you pat yourself on the back about the job you did today? You just denied that visa. Did it just like make you feel good? You know, I'm like,
well, and
we've gone from like, okay, most visas probably are approvable unless they're just completely like, thrown together and no one knows the law. But if an attorney that's experienced prepares, and you can kind of see through it. Does this multinational manager qualify? My client just came. Well, they aren't my client yet. They came to me, went to somebody else, got a denial, and then came back to me. And I was like, this is pretty clear that it is a multinational manager, even though that attorney probably didn't prepare it the way I would have prepared it. But they just went out of their way to deny it. And then we see that with H-1Bs. I mean, now it's like the denial rate is skyrocketing, the request for evidence rate is skyrocketing. And, I don't know, where is this coming from? I know it's coming from above. There must be incentives for issuing RFEs, or they're shutting down all communication with our bar association, American Immigration Lawyers
It's pretty
Association.
much a black hole. You really can't get through to anyone. And, but, talking aside a little bit about the border wall, a friend of mine posted, attorney friend of mine, and he said, if we could get, and then not advocating for a wall, but he's just saying, let's just say we have to have one. If we charged a penalty fee to the 800,000 DACA recipients in the country, that could potentially fund this stupid wall. And then in addition to that, if you charged people who the undocumented immigrants of the country $6,000, I mean, that's a lot of money, but I know people will gladly pay that for a pathway to citizenship. A $6,000 penalty fee. And then you could have all the money you wanted to build a wall, to put security, to do anything you wanted on that border. And we're just people are not interested in coming up with solutions, is what I'm saying.
I think,
Would that
all the way
be-
around.
Would that be $5 billion or whatever he's asking for, though?
It would be close to that amount, yeah. What he's asking
Don't ask
for.
me to
I've
do
got a
math on a
question.
Saturday.
Is he wanting a wall across the length of the entire southern border?
Well,
Is that
I
what the
don't
$5
think
billion is for?
he knows, because I actually heard
How many
I was-
miles is it? 2,000?
I was listening to NPR, and his position has changed over time.
Yes,
So
do you know that?
all the time he's been saying, he said, well, I'm not going to do it on all 2,000 miles of it. And then he said, it'll be a concrete wall. And then engineers were like, that's not possible. And then he said, it'll be a chain link fence.
Yeah.
Wait, that,
And a metal thing
in a
or-
metal
yeah.
thing or something. And then they're like, well, visibility. Officers need to be able to see who's on the other. Oh my God. So I don't think he really knows.
I like
exactly what's
all
going
these
on.
mock-ups of the wall that he tweets out. It's a pretty good use of the president's time. I
I've
feel
seen
like.
a great one where he has a Lego wall.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I think, neither side is even talking right now, which makes me unhappy for all of the people affected by this shutdown. So everybody up there needs to get
do you
busy
think this could
to find a way.
conceivably go on for how? I mean,
I was
wanna
hoping it would be
think
done by
about
the
it.
weekend.
Well, I don't think he has.
I guess that was
I don't think he has
crazy
any
wishes.
any incentive at all to give in.
Yeah,
this
they
is
haven't
all,
met in 10
It
days.
has to be Congress at this point.
I mean, this is all red meat for his base. I mean, he's standing up to the establishment. He's refusing to give in.
Yeah.
That's the way it's.
And so it's like a game of chicken.
So
Who's going to duck
I will
first?
say this. I personally think that if and I don't know anything about open borders policy. There's tons of books and literature about that, about how that would be a better policy than having boundaries between nation states. I don't know anything about that. But if we are going to have a border, and in the past, I think Trump is right. The Democrats have supported funding for targeted portions of a wall along portions of the border that are more susceptible to crossings without permission. If that's what he wants, then I wonder how much this is just, how much the Democrats could give on this issue.
And it sounds
It's
like
just
they're not
frustrating.
willing to.
Nobody's giving
I
anything.
do think
and
Trump
it's-
has become such a symbol of everything that we consider to be wrong with the country that the Democrats are thinking any concession we make is a concession to that idea. And I think all these DACA folks are getting lost in the mix sometimes. Like,
Yeah.
trust me, I can't stand Trump as much as the next person, but this shutdown could go on, until the spring. I don't think he has any incentive to give anything.
Yeah.
And if it really is stuff that the Democrats have agreed to in the past, I think he's wanting a little more, or maybe a lot more. But
That's going to cripple the country. How are you going to have TSA, CBP, all these people, the essential workers, policemen, or whatever? Whatever the federal, I guess, federal.
It would be money misspent for sure. Like, there's way better uses you could use that money for, as far as like border protection and even the Democrats, if you said, I think, like monitoring folks who come over here on tourist visas or non-immigrant visas to make sure they don't
there's
overstay.
none of that.
And I think
right now.
all of the studies have shown that that's where most of the folks who are here without status is not people who come in without inspection across the border. It's that people that overstay lawful non-immigrant visas. So it's no doubt money misspent. But I'm just thinking, I don't know. We've got this president in office right now, and it's an awful situation.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying the Democrats should give in, but I do think that there's no conversation going on right now.
And that's my frustration.
It's just
There is
I'm
zero
100% right.
conversation.
No, I'm 100% right.
It's like both of them are on top of their little hills,
Yeah.
and nobody is going to come down and try to have any sort of talk, compromise, discussion whatsoever. And it's very frustrating for me that both sides are being that way.
I think like George Bush Sr., I think he kind of did a couple things that were unpopular for his base and didn't get reelected because of it. But he made those concessions because he put the country first.
Right.
So I think that both sides are not putting the country first.
I think so. They're sticking with their ideals, but once you get to Washington D.C., you're dealing with people who have different opinions than you, different political views than you, and the job of our Congress and our president is to find a way to make those two sides work together, and they're not working together at all right now.
Yeah, so I don't know. Did we talk? Okay, so we covered. We're still doing the shutdown.
Yeah, finish the State Department.
I guess we've got Department of Labor,
Yes.
which a lot of people asked about Department of Labor. So that's labor certifications, labor condition applications for H-1Bs, prevailing wage, H-2B, which there's a whole other thing on the H-2Bs we can talk about in a minute. But so Department of Labor is funded already. So luckily, we are okay on Department of Labor side.
Thank goodness.
I know, because that would just cripple everything. That would just, and so, for example, there's a program called H-2B, it's temporary workers. And just to make the point about our economy is doing well, there's a need for workers. So the H-2B is a temporary worker. You've got to have a seasonal peak load, one-time need, and you've got to prove that. And there's 66,000 visas available for individuals each year. Employers apply for those, and you apply every half year. So it's 33,000 each half year. And so January 1 was the date that you could apply. And they were like first come, first serve, which is kind of crazy. But that's when you can apply for your H-2Bs for this half of the fiscal year. The first 5 minutes, they received 97,000 applications on the iCert Department of Labor website.
Wow.
So it crashed. And
for everybody,
for
not just-
everybody. So
I
we
was
could not
trying to file some H-related things.
So we couldn't get prevailing wages.
Yep.
To file perms, we couldn't get We couldn't get the labor condition applications. We couldn't download them or print them for the H-1Bs, and it was down for
Over a week,
Yeah,
maybe 10
9
days.
days.
Yeah.
I had a client, literally his status was like, he couldn't teach this in school anymore. And it was like, we were, Hail Mary pass on this. And, it was like, what do we do? We filed the LCA in time. We're like, are we going to get it there? And luckily, I don't know. Praise the Lord. It was like one of those things like 3 days later, California Service Center approved my H-1B without an RFE. And this is one of the things.
Wow.
I had one little, because it was a cap I was trying to make the cap exemption, because of course there's no H-1Bs available right now if you're trying to apply as a new H-1B. So you have to be cap exempt and fall within one of those regulations. So one of those is, or one of those provisions for definitions of cap exemption, which one of them is if you're a nonprofit affiliated with an institution of higher education. So my client, because of another DOL mishap, we could never get registered on the PERM website, so the employer could
it's not
file.
just me. I've had one
And
that
then
I had to paper file.
Once we got registered, once we got registered,
Yeah.
the prevailing wage was expiring, so
Oh
we
my
didn't
gosh.
it was like the timing was just
Yeah.
so we didn't. It was just a whole comedy of errors, but. I was like, I think you guys qualify as a cap exempt H-1B because are you affiliated with any, they've had affiliations with Georgia Tech, and we could not get anyone to sign a memorialization of the affiliation agreement. Finally, they have lots of different little programs like hydroponics and like robotics and all these things they do with Georgia Tech and even SCAD, I think. But so finally we got that letter. I don't know. Somehow we got the affiliation agreement, and that's all I had. Was one affiliation agreement, which is what they require, and there has to be certain, things. It has to be, the petitioner has to have, they have to work towards the mission of education and research, of the Higher Institute of Higher Education. But anyway, we put everything was there, and we explained the situation. I didn't get a pushback on it. I didn't get anything. It was a J1 teacher. He was working and he was going to expire on the 15th. We got approved on the 11th. Seamless thing. I was going to probably have to tell him you're going to have to sit at home, or I don't know. And our perm is pending. I'm like, I was almost like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this guy. And I was almost like,
I hope he sends you flowers.
oh no, this guy is like amazing. I'm like, I want him to teach my kids. He's an amazing, wonderful teacher. Like just an amazing guy. That's like from Canada. Mm-hmm. Has a PhD teaching at one of our private schools here in Atlanta. Such a lovely man. And I mean, I've never met him, but he's like lovely to talk to.
Well, don't you just love it when like your favorite clients get
Yes.
through? I mean,
good.
I love all my clients.
Oh, I'm
but-
having a play date with one of my clients today because she was she came in and to my office. She was a DACA brought over here from Africa, I think Ivory Coast, by some unknown relative. So there was no, travel document or anything. She didn't remember the story. She was young. I mean, she's maybe like 9. Didn't really remember who brought her here, but she got to family somehow, extended family here in the U.S., and then that's who raised her. And then she went on to, graduate high school, go to college, has a really good job. And then now she's married and she has a little baby. But I met her when she was on DACA. And so she came in and just a lovely, beautiful woman. And I was like, you must drink a lot of water because she just sat down and just tears, like tears. Because I think just all the years of like not knowing, and this is several years ago, not kind of knowing what's going on or this insecurity and all of that stuff. And I was like, don't worry, we'll take care of you. So we renewed the DACA, and then she was marrying a military guy. And so
perfect.
we did parole in place
VIP.
for her, which stressed me out even more because it took like literally over a year and a half, I think, to get that.
Yeah.
In the meantime, like I had my twins, and then she was pregnant, and then I remember she called me on the phone. She's like, Elizabeth, I went into labor at 26 weeks and my baby was born at 26 weeks. So I was like, that even more, I'm like, you've got to approve this parole in place because like we're the stress on this family. Yeah. But luckily her child is doing really well now. She's 2.
That's amazing.
And we've got her adjusted. She's, she did her,
So she has a green card
we got the
now.
parole in place. She's got her green card.
Right.
She's like thriving.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those are like the happy stories. And like, and I'm like, yeah, we're coming over. We're to do a play date today because I want to see that little girl. Number one.
The little miracle.
Yeah.
And just for anyone who doesn't know, parole in place, if you are married to a serviceman or woman, you can...
Or any relative.
Or any relative.
Immediate relative.
So, immediate relative. So, you can apply if you entered unlawfully, or you can apply to get that parole, basically saying
To fix that unlawful entry.
it's a legal fiction that basically says even though you entered unlawfully, we're going to pretend like you did lawfully, and that makes a huge difference because then you can apply for your green card inside the country without having to.
And there's for
depart.
many years there was no policy on that. They just it was kind of under the table, and then they put a policy memorandum out and guidance. And now it's been wonderful for military families.
Yes.
Now they're ripping apart everything in the military. I mean, everything with military immigration is gone.
When was that granted, Elizabeth?
The parole in place. And I've got another one I'm doing now. That was probably 2 years ago.
Because there's rumors that the field office is no longer granting those. I know that nationwide they still are granting them, according to one of these
I haven't
Facebook
heard
groups.
What about
that.
Atlanta? Because I'm getting ready to file in Atlanta.
I don't know. I've got one pending. Well, at my previous job, I filed one, and as far as I know, it's still pending, and it's been
Wow.
like over a year.
Yeah.
Well, we had in the previous practice that I was in last year, we got one approved. So
Okay, good.
a couple approved. So
I think I might.
as soon as
We would have
as
heard,
early
hopefully.
as
I was thinking
Yeah.
maybe I should do the parole in place and the I-130 just in case we need to do a waiver.
Right.
Right. That's the most secure
Yeah, one
route.
of mine, I did that too.
Yeah. So kind of going back to the shutdown thing, because we didn't talk about ICE, and I know that
yes.
there's, are they on break from arresting people? No, they're not.
No.
Without pay. They're going to work without pay.
Oh, they're so
They did
dedicated.
just for kicks. But what about check-ins? I know they're still working with people who are detained. But check-ins, Will, have you had any experience with people going to check in and being told, we're not seeing you today? What's going on with that?
Since the shutdown, no, I haven't had any personal experience with that, but it's my understanding that check-ins are still going on.
Yeah.
And check-ins are generally people who, it depends. Sometimes it can be recent arrivals who are detained at the border and then released pending the date of their removal proceeding. But in the meantime, they're required to periodically check in physically with ICE, immigrations, and enforcement and removal operations, ERO, here in Atlanta. It's my understanding those are still going forward even during the shutdown.
Yes. And that's what the official line is too. It says it's a law enforcement agency, so ICE is continuing to operate as normal. I believe that means funded. They're funded. Okay, so they're essential. Okay, so after the shutdown, what is going on in everyone's day-to-day practice? I think that I have seen some of the craziest questions from immigration, decisions from immigration, and sometimes I sit in my office and I say, what are you thinking? Where did you get this from? And I know it's happening to other attorneys because we do talk, we say, well, the other day immigration asked me XYZ. So what
Do you remember we just were we were all three at the Georgia Bar Business Immigration Law Seminar. They were posted. One of the presenters posted the increase, and this is even 2017 increase in requests for evidence, increase in denials. Do you remember
70%?
70% from like 23
Of
or
H-1Bs
something.
that were filed in April 2018 received a request for evidence.
And then what was the denial rate? Did they post the denial rate?
I don't remember.
I know the
I thought
denial
they
rate.
said-
Denial rate is skyrocketed.
I
Yeah.
thought they said the approval rate was like 50%. So I remember being like, wow, why would anyone want to go the H-1B route with these kinds of numbers?
That's
It's
that's
awful.
and generally that is an area I think that used to be a visa where
If you
the
follow the
job,
rules
if
step
the
by
job
step.
fits,
Yep.
you can look at DOL guidance, and if the person has a bachelor's degree or higher and they work within that field, there should not be a big issue because you can look at the Department of Labor guidance and you can see all of that. But now they're just like I actually got an H-1B denial and there's nothing I can do about it, and the employer doesn't want to sue. It's because and then a lot of my colleagues around the country are having these crazy denials. They're going after the definition of specialty occupation. There's 4 tenets to that. There's and they're saying that your client doesn't meet anyone, and we do and this was a business intelligence analyst, which there could be maybe more than one degree specialty that you could use to fill this job. or that they could.
But that is permissible under the regulations. So don't get me started, Elizabeth.
They go back to the definition of a specialty occupation, which what's required for an H-1B is you must have a bachelor's degree in a specific quote unquote specialty. So they're saying, well, if there's more than one
degree,
if there's more than one degree that's required for this job, then that's fine. And so even we would get ads from other employers are like, well, those employers are not like employers. So the ads that require degrees for these types of jobs, those are not like employers. We even had an expert professor review all of the documentation, the job description, everything, and they rejected the expert opinions. That we'd always rely on the expert opinions. Rejected the expert opinion and said the expert needs to come to the office and sit with the employee. Or else how can they even tell what the employee is doing? So, I mean, it doesn't matter what we do now. They're just going to deny all this stuff. So, I mean, I'm almost like, well, if my big employees, I need to just get one or get a couple experts because they have IT and they have business and get them to come and like just sit with everybody and figure out their job. I mean, how much is that going to cost? And like,
oh my gosh. And then it's cost prohibitive, which I wonder is that the point?
I know. And so they're pushing this bar. Let's just see if we can do that because employers do not want to sue. I know from my experience, because I did all my research with a lot of attorneys that have employers that are litigating, immigration doesn't want to litigate. Mm-hmm. So they're going to pretty much, they file their pleadings. Sometimes you can get injunctive relief and, I've seen one lawsuit, injunctive relief so they can continue to work. My case, she still has authorization, but they don't want to go forward with her. And also another reason that they deny the H-1Bs, if it's a entry level, a level 1 wage, there's 4 levels. They'll say, well, if it's a level 1 wage, then that means it's not a specialty occupation.
I disagree with that
Which,
too.
of course, I mean, well, we even said,
why does it exist?
So I know what they say, but I don't agree.
we went through what. I mean, we're very thoughtful about we had a response to an RFE, and we've done it before. We've done it before many times. This same job, there's another employer, and I don't let immigration hear that, but because they could try to revoke that.
Yeah.
But we're very thoughtful about, hey, a doctor and a lawyer, even level 1, do require at least a bachelor's degree, or an engineer.
They are properly a level 1 wage. I use that analogy.
And I mean, you're for someone right out of college, an entry level should be entry level.
No experience, no supervision. That's a level 1 wage. Doesn't matter what the position is.
But so appeals. So when you're going through, so we're getting these denials that are completely wrong. We would never have gotten them even a year ago. We're seeing, and I'm on national liaison level, so I can kind of talk to other attorneys about this, and we're hearing reports. I filed 3 H-1Bs for this particular job. The job description is the same, and 2 of them were approved and 1 was denied. The exact same. Mm-hmm. This is the kind of decision making we're getting. But we've even put out practice pointers that are like, please do not tell the Immigration Service that you got, 2 approvals for the same job, because they will come back and they will try to revoke those. Yes. So you've got to be very, very careful and how you're doing, how you're going about fixing these denials. I mean, many times you could refile and possibly refile in a different position. Sometimes if it's a cap case, you can't refile. So you can appeal. Appeals take a long time. And a lot of times now I feel like they're going to be rubber stamped. I would go always, there's no premium processing, but I would always go to premium processing if available, and I would ask them to reconsider. I always ask to reconsider everything with premium processing. And I've actually gotten denials overturned. And then the next step is just file a federal lawsuit under the Administrative Procedures Act. And what I've heard is that they don't want to litigate these cases. So as soon as they file the pleadings, they don't even have the file. They're like, request a file. And it's really just like, you get an approval notice in the mail, or you get your premium,
it's
or
like
whatever.
A bully. And then once you finally confront the bully and go to court,
that's why
never mind.
And so I was talking to another attorney who actually worked with the Immigrationist Council, and he had lots of really interesting things to say. There was I went to a CLE on immigration, physician immigration, and so there was talk was litigation, and how to resolve things in this day and age. But he was saying even back then you could get the paper file he'd like request a file. It's a paper file at immigration, and there'd be a sticky note, likely to sue. And they're like,
I want that sticky note to be on my cases.
right. And you're like,
how can I get that?
Why would this be client likely? Why would they be likely to sue? Because they sued before.
Yeah.
So I think even for employers who are scared to like stand up to immigration, I mean, it's extra money and hassle, but that's going to kind of, if you get the reputation that you're not going to put up with this, then, by suing, then, you're going to have better adjudications down the road, because I think they do keep track of that.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's our new world. I mean, I entered.
Give my crazy H-1B request. The best one I got this year for an RFE. My client is a biomedical project engineer, so you have to select a general occupational classification, and they give you a big list, like you can be a scientist, you can be all these different things. Well, I chose biomedical engineer for my biomedical project engineer, okay? And immigration wrote me back. They wrote me a huge 12-page RFE, and part of the RFE said, we don't believe you selected the right occupational classification. And so I had to write 3 or 4 pages and go through all the duties for them and explain to immigration why my job title was properly selected for the general occupational classification. And I won the case, but the effort that they made me go through to explain something that should be crystal clear to any logical person is unbelievable.
No, I mean, it's like we would win. I would always win after RFE. I mean, this is like the first one I've had in
I'm nervous.
a
I've got
decade.
one that I'm nervous.
I mean,
I've got one pending, and I just hope it gets approved.
I'm talking to other practitioners.
We don't get denials historically.
I'm talking to other. If you do the right, because we're not going to take a case that's not going to be approvable.
Right. But that was before this year. Now the best cases
other
are
practitioners,
getting denied.
experts, like the best immigration lawyers in the country are receiving these types of denials. So it's like it makes me feel better that other people are getting them, but I don't feel better.
No.
And along that vein, what we want people to know is that we live in a different world right now.
Yes.
With immigration, everything has to be super detailed. Everything has to be done properly, done by somebody who's knowledgeable. Like, we're not saying it just so that you'll come to us and hire us, but truly we are seeing unprecedented actions and decisions being taken by the government. I'll give you my best RFE story.
Okay.
So I was filing, I believe it was an I-730, is a petition for an immediate relative of a refugee. It needs to be filed within 2 years of entry, and the relative needed to be disclosed in the refugee petition. And so we submit this documentation, great, beautiful couple, and with a lot of evidence, and we get an RFE saying, so you know how in the United States we do things a little differently. So here, when you put a date, you put month, day, year. Everywhere else in the world is the day, month, year. So this couple, I'm just going to say what I think I remember, got married on August 2nd, 2005. So we put in the paperwork, they got married on 8/2/2005.
Right.
But because the marriage certificate said they got married on 2/8/2005, we got an RFE asking, well, you said you got married on August 2nd, 2005, but your marriage certificate says you got married on February 8th, 2005. Please provide an explanation for this. And I'm just sitting there going like, have these guys ever been abroad? What kind of training do they get? I mean, so I had to go, and I know they never tell you to use like Wikipedia, but I literally couldn't think of anything else to provide. And I just had to send an article explaining how everywhere else in the world you put the dates differently.
And who is going to know more about international things than the USCIS, who deals with documents from all over the world?
Somebody posted one time. They said it was like, you said, in your petition, you stated your birth date was 10/18.
I was going to bring that up.
2000 or whatever, 1990, 86, and then. But actually, your birth date listed on the form on your whatever is 10/18/1986, the exact same date. Can you please clarify this discrepancy?
They said your birthday is 10/18/86, and then they said, but on your forms you wrote 10/18/86. Please clarify this discrepancy in your forms.
You're just like,
it's like, what is happening? You know,
Well, there's also been some pretty crazy RFEs for petitions for special immigrant juvenile status
okay.
and U visa.
Okay, let's take up on that when we come back from our break. So this is Beyond the Border, and we're going to take a little break, and we'll be back in just a minute.
we'll be back, guys.